Rob, I really want to talk to you about the Steam Deck. I know it's at the bottom of our list, but can we put...
No, go on. I can tell you're excited. We can talk about it now.
I do want to. There's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about here. Lots of interesting stuff, including clothing. We've got fashion, we've got Macs, we've got automation, and we've got video games. This is what they call a banger, I think, in the UK.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think this is we're hitting all of the podcast topics in one go.
We are.
Today.
I'm gonna call it a banger before we even get started, practically. But here's the thing about the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck is, of course, the portable handheld PC gaming device that was announced about a week ago, I guess, by Steam. Funny enough, it's basically looks a little bit like a Switch, but it's a lot chunkier. It has a PC chip in it and SSD storage, and it runs games from Steam. It runs, PC video games. Now, I'm actually very skeptical about this because, one, I don't think a lot of PC games are particularly well built for a screen that size, and it's actually going to be smaller than the screen of the Switch OLED that's coming out towards the end of the year. And this isn't coming out until at the beginning. Some of them are coming out at the end of the year, and some of them might actually come out next year, I think, depending on the storage capacity and type you get. But the screen's smaller. It's 720p. What else? I'm not sure. I know that developers can target different types of devices with the same game, same code, and have slightly different graphics and text and things per game. But I'm not convinced that this is going to be particularly that a lot of games are really built with anything close to this small of a screen in mind, which might make it harder to play these games. Plus, the thing is just chunky, and it has a million different little input methods. It's got the usual stuff you find on a console controller or a handheld device. Plus, it's got little trackpads, like thumb trackpads, right under the thumbsticks. Which there's a lot going on this thing, and I haven't seen. I got to admit, I haven't read a ton about it, but I do wonder whether the thing's going to run hot, whether it's going to be powerful enough to play games at a frame rate and that kind of thing that people will find acceptable, and whether it's going to be readable, all those things. So I have not ordered one. Have you ordered one, Rob?
No, good heavens, no. This is
you know who did? Federico immediately bought one, and I gave him a hard time about it because I was like, this thing could really be terrible.
Yeah, I see. I look at something like this, and like you, I mean, I feel like the problem is if you've got something like a Switch, right? You go buy a Switch, whether it's the old one or the new OLED model or whatever. You buy that Switch, and you know that it's going to play any Switch game that gets released, right, ever, pretty much, because that's sort of one of the advantages, quote unquote, of consoles is that if a game gets released at the beginning of the cycle or right at the end, you still know it's going to play on that original hardware. But how long is this Steam Deck going to sort of support the latest games? Right. I mean, they sort of kept showing Control in all of these videos and stuff, and I'm like, well, Control's already a few years old. It's not. Do you know what I mean? This isn't like a top end game anymore.
No, it's not. And these things aren't coming out until the end of the year or beginning of next year. And this technology for PC gaming changes very, very quickly compared to a console. So it's a little hard. I mean, I think conceptually, I think the idea is fantastic. I'm not surprised though that it's never really been done successfully in the past.
Yeah, and I don't think Steam have a particularly good reputation for doing hardware. They had
True.
The weird controller with the touchpad. They had like it was a PC, but it was like supposed to be treated like a console, and it had like a big TV mode thing. It was like a little,
I remember
like a small mini sort of box. That was a few years ago, and like, where's that now? I don't think I ever even met anybody who'd even considered buying one, let alone heard of it. And I feel like this is in the same scenario. Like I can understand that somebody like Federico, who is fairly interested in like game preservation, emulation, and stuff like that. Like this is going to be an incredible bit of hardware to do emulation, but there's also a million other ways of doing that where you don't have to spend $200, $300, $400
Yeah,
to do it.
that is very true. I mean, yeah, I've got a little handheld Linux-based emulator console that's great, and it was a lot cheaper than that. It was like, I don't know, $150, I want to say, something like that, and I can play all sorts of Nintendo ROMs on it. It came with a whole bunch of them already loaded on it, and yeah, I mean, these are obviously not necessarily built particularly for Nintendo games, but you could run emulation on it and do just about whatever you want, and run Windows if you want, and do a bunch of different things. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. I'm not super interested in it. I did pre-order an OLED version of the Switch because just the idea of a bigger screen that's crisper and better colors, that makes a big difference to me, because when I do play it, I play it handheld for the most part. So I do want to get that. So we'll see. It's quite a year for handhelds, because, I guess too, we should mention the Playdate is going to go on pre-order tomorrow. It's at noon my time. I'm not sure. So around 6 p.m. your time, and 10 a.m. Pacific, I think is what it is. I think those times are right. But I'm really looking forward to that. I mean, they gave a hands-on to, I think, The Verge and Ars Technica and Polygon and maybe IGN and a few other places. And everybody seems to really like it. The build quality is supposedly really good. There was less said about the games. I think that Panic is wisely trying to keep that stuff more of a surprise still, except for that kind of game that they launched it with, which is I forget, it's like the robot trying to go out on a date or something, where you crank and he moves through the timeline. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm really looking forward to it. I am going to try to pre-order one. I am afraid that there's going to be incredible demand for this. I think they're building 20,000 at the get-go, and they're not going to have limited pre-orders. They're just going to let people keep ordering, and it'll just, stack up. The ship date will just stack up and move out as time goes on, and they'll give people refunds, but if they don't want to wait. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of demand for it right out of the gate, and I'm looking forward to it. There's so much going on with handheld gaming right now; it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, the Playdate is way more interesting to me than the Steam Deck.
Same
I mean, the Steam Deck is. I would bet money on it. The Steam Deck won't get a version 2. There will be nothing. Like this will come out, and in a couple of years it'll be, oh, remember the Steam Deck? That was a fun thing. Whereas I think the Playdate actually has, I mean, it's unique. It's an interesting new thing. And the Steam Deck is really not that interesting. It's just a PC that you can happen to play handheld, although I imagine it's going to be pretty heavy. So
yeah, I think it is going to be heavy. I haven't spent a lot of time looking at the specs, but it does look awfully chunky. And the Playdate is so tiny. I mean, I think it's not going to be like a replacement for any other kind of gaming you might be interested in, but it's a nice supplement to it. And I think there are going to be some interesting, innovative indie games, which are the kind of games that I like to play anyway. So I also just like the idea of the games being delivered to me automatically once a week during the season, because it's just a little thing to look forward to, that you can, whatever day that is that it comes in, you can play around with a new game for a week and then have something new to try after that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I say, I just think it's more interesting. So, I hope you're able to get one in the first batch, but I mean, who knows? I think it's hard to. You say 20,000 to me, but I really have no sense of how many people, are going to go buy one of these. So
I assume that what they did is they had people sign up for an email list, and there are probably rules of thumb about how many people who sign up for an email list for a pre-order notification will actually buy, and that they based it, at least in part, off of that. But, who knows? I mean, this is really their first time doing hardware, so that, there's who knows if they guessed right or not. I would assume that the inclination would be to be conservative so they don't get stuck with a bunch of inventory. But, who knows? We'll have to see, I guess.
Yeah, physical products are difficult. So good luck to them. I hope they've sort of managed to get it right.
I'm avoiding digital. I'm avoiding physical products for now. I'm sticking with digital for as long as I possibly can. So, Rob, you have to tell me about what you've been doing with Alfred, because we linked to your Alfred thing in the Club Mac Stories newsletter last week, because I checked it out and it was pretty cool. But why don't you explain what you're doing with reminders and Alfred?
Yeah. So, I've been using reminders. I've been using Alfred for, I checked my license like 7 years or something. And I pretty much use it for everything.
Yeah, I do too.
Like launching apps, finding folders, all of that kind of stuff.
Clipboard? I've been using that a lot more lately.
Oh yeah, the clipboard manager saves me, 20 times a day easily. And it's not even about saving me at this point. It's like I'm aware that if I copy something, I can just find it later.
Right.
Because I have the clipboard to save. I think it saves about 3 months worth of stuff. So I can almost always find anything that I remember copying at least. So I can't even remember. I think I downloaded Raycast, which is like a new launcher.
Yeah, I'm familiar with them.
It's sort of like an Alfred competitor. They got like, $1 gajillion in funding for some reason. I'm really not sure what the business plan is there, but and it's pretty nice. Like it feels like as if Alfred was launched today. I think Raycast is what it would be.
My sense is they're a little developer-y focused too. Like they have integrations that are very developer-oriented with things like GitHub, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I downloaded it just to try it out because somebody had mentioned it, and I saw they had this they've got reminders and a calendar integration, so you can tick off upcoming reminders, you can create new ones and stuff like that. And I sort of started looking around for one for Alfred, because I figured, well, Alfred's been around for years. Reminder's been on the Mac for 5 years or something like that, maybe 6. And there's a few around. Now, the easiest thing you can do with reminders is set up a script to create one.
Right.
That's sort of like the bare minimum you can do. And I probably found about 5 of these workflows for Alfred that I could just create a reminder or create a calendar event. And I was like, that's really not what I want. I want to see upcoming ones. I want to mark them off. Because if all I'm doing is creating them, that's really not that helpful.
What do they use? Do they use AppleScript, some of these other ones, or are they using some other method to create the new reminders?
Yeah, most of the ones that I found were just using AppleScript, because you can basically just you can just do like tell reminders, create reminder or whatever with a string, and it will sort of do all the parsing and stuff like that. So I thought, no, do you know what? I can do this. Raycast have done it. They've got upcoming reminders. You can tick them off. You can create new ones. I thought, this can't be this hard. And I but keep in mind, I've never written Swift. I've not written Objective-C. I've not done an iOS app, so I'm not in the slightest bit familiar with the APIs at all. And I tried a bunch of different stuff. I tried AppleScript, and eventually I found a command line tool. I think it's called Reminders CLI. And it was fairly basic. It would just give you a list of your reminders, but they weren't ordered by date. I think it just had completion, and it would just do like a default list. So I took that code and started changing it so that it would like order stuff, and I could get all of my reminders rather than just from one specific list. And like the next thing I know, like the code's like barely recognizable from what this guy had originally done. And I'm on Twitter complaining about event kit reminder URLs, because apparently this is the thing that doesn't work, and I'm like, what has happened? I was just trying to build a little workflow to and then I built a calendar version, because the APIs are essentially the same. Like behind the scenes, a reminder just extends a calendar event, so it just has some extra properties, but it is still just a calendar event. So the code for getting reminders or getting calendar events is pretty much the same. So I released a workflow for that as well, for calendar events. And I now have a third one I'm working on, which merges the two into one. And it will like open up just a web page, which is like your overview of the day.
Oh, that's nice.
Of your events and reminders. I want to get it right, so I haven't just sort of rushed to release
Right.
this one, because I've had to upgrade. I've had to change the CLI again and make a lot of changes in Alfred. And I've been learning a lot about Alfred workflows because I've been doing these like hacky workarounds. And I'm like, oh, there's actually utility to do this thing that I'm doing. Because Alfred workflows, it can be fairly powerful. I mean, it sort of looks like you're just doing a lot of if and else statements. But there's a lot going on there. Like they've really done a good job at the editor for workflows.
Well, that's interesting. I've not spent a lot of time with workflows. I mean, I've made a few very simple ones in the past, but it's always struck me as one of those things that I probably should get more involved in. And I think one of the things that to me is really interesting about shortcuts coming to the Mac is the integration that's going to be possible with apps like Alfred and others that are already there doing this kind of, deep automation on the Mac. Because anything that, you can run shortcuts with AppleScript. So anything that can support AppleScript, whether it's Hazel or Alfred or Keyboard Maestro or whatever it is, can already run shortcuts even if they haven't, the developer hasn't decided to officially integrate it in kind of a native sort of way into their own code. You can still run it via AppleScript. So I think it's going to be interesting because it just extends what the possibilities are, because there are things in shortcuts that are probably a little more difficult to deal with. And one of the things that when I saw your workflow that you created, one of the first things that struck me about it is I wonder if some of what you're doing could be done instead of using a command line tool with the shortcuts actions. And I need to take a closer look at whether that's possible. It's like on my to-do list for part of the review is to look at what is in shortcuts for as far as reminders actions, and are they working on the Mac yet? Because I'll tell you, one of the things about shortcuts on the Mac, I haven't spent an enormous amount of time with it yet because so much of it is still broken. Everything's really buggy right now on the betas. It always is with shortcuts, and it's to be expected. But I was building a shortcut the other day, and it's you get to the point where you're not sure if what you're trying to do, if you're doing something wrong, or whether you're hitting a bug, and that can be hard to tell sometimes with shortcuts since there's there's not really meaningful logging or other kind of checkpoints or any other kind of developer tools for debugging a shortcut. There are some things you can do and some tips and tricks that you can employ, but it is pretty hard to do that. Yeah, that sounds really neat. I like the idea. So with the calendar and reminders integration, you said you're doing a web page. So are you generating a static web page and displaying it in Safari? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just taking all of the data and I generate it to like a temporary HTML file and just open that HTML file in the default browser. So it's not dynamic or anything like that. I mean, if you reran it after you'd marked some stuff, it would change. But it's just one of those things where it's kind of just quite nice to sort of open it and I can see everything. Because generally I have a bunch of reminders set in the morning, like when I first get up, and then I mark those off, but I'll still have stuff going on throughout the day. And speaking of reminders, shortcuts, I did look at the command line tool, and I do have a workflow for running shortcuts from Alfred, which I can't test because I don't have Monterey installed anywhere. So I will send it to you, and you should be able to run them. And I think there's also a view option on the command line tool, so I think you can alt enter, and I'll send it over to you when I get a chance. But yeah, I saw that and I thought, yeah, it must be doable. I'm basically guessing at this point because there's no way I'm installing it right now.
Right. It's surprisingly stable, but it is, I mean, I say that, and yet, Safari's been crashing on me a couple of times a day at least. Maybe not with this fourth beta. Beta 3, it was crashing quite a bit, but I've had beta 4 on my machine for the last 24 hours, and I don't think Safari has crashed. So maybe it's in the clear now. We'll see. But speaking of Safari, this is what they call a segue, Rob.
That was amazing. That was
yes,
perfect.
Yes, you have something
Absolutely
in here about
perfect.
Snow Leopard Safari 5 being rebuilt in Swift UI. What's that all about? I hadn't seen this.
Oh yeah, this is fun. I'm not sure where I think somebody in a Slack or a Discord posted this. But yeah, somebody has painstakingly built an exact replica of Safari 5 from Snow Leopard.
Wow.
But obviously just with a normal WebKit view, so I can load Mac stories, which is what I loaded up, and like I could load my website, and everything's fine. So and it has like the blue loading bar across the address, where it sort of fills up the whole address bar, like it used to. I mean, I don't think it's, nobody's going to switch to this as their real browser, but it's just sort of a fun little thing, or you can just download it and run it and probably do what I did and load up like 2 websites and go, yeah, this is cool. There's not really a lot else you could do. It's like an interesting proof of concept, but it's really, I don't think there's a lot of use there.
There is somebody who created an iOS 6 replica out of Swift UI that's a beta that is floating around that you can get, and it's pretty amazing too. A lot of the apps that have been recreated in Swift UI from iOS 6 have been recreated and actually work. I mean, last time I tried it, I haven't tried it in at least a month. Last time I tried it, some things didn't work, but I know that there have been updates coming out. So it's pretty interesting what people are doing with some of this Swift UI. I mean, it's something that I've talked to developers about a lot over the last several months, and people are very excited about Swift UI in general. But I think also at the same time, often a little bit frustrated by it because it's still, as far as it's come, there are some hard limitations that are hard to get used to if you're coming from, I don't know, traditional iOS programming.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's something, I think I had a little play around with it when it was released. And I've got a few ideas floating around. I mean, now I've written a little bit of Swift. I'm like, wow, I'm basically a Mac developer at this point. I mean, I think the point, as soon as I started complaining about APIs being broken on Twitter, I think that was me done, right?
Yeah, you've become
that's
official
the threshold.
There's no doubt you're a cranky Mac developer now. That's just a very specific breed of programmer. But that's really cool. So another one that you've kind of slipped in on me here, Rob, is that Pizza Hut is doing clothing. I mean, this is big news. How did I must, I don't know where I've been living, but I've missed this somehow.
Well, I mean, this is an article that came out. Oh, it was actually yesterday, but I only saw it this morning. I literally saw it like maybe 2 hours, 3 hours before we recorded.
This stuff. I just opened up this picture.
Yeah, I mean, it is glorious. They've got a tracksuit.
They do.
They've got.
It looks like a red and white checked tablecloth.
Right, exactly. They've got. I'm gonna just, as an aside, sliders. They're called. I used to. These are just flip flops, aren't they? I don't. Sliders appears to be a new word for these, and I actually bought some. Not these Pizza Hut ones. The other day, but I went to the shop and I needed some flip flops, and I was like. It just said sliders everywhere, and I'm like, why do we have a new word for this? They're just flip flops. I don't understand.
Oh, yeah, everybody needs a new word. They don't really need a new word. This is amazing. So the options are plastic. Now, see, these are very much. This is the old school Pizza Hut logo that probably dates back to, I don't know, at least the 70s in the U.S. And I was not a big Pizza Hut person growing up, but I do remember going to a Pizza Hut once or twice, and they had these exact kind of red plastic glasses for, drinks that you would, if you were eating at the Pizza Hut. And then the tracksuit is based off the logo, which is, I guess, a Pizza Hut box with a check tablecloth motif or something.
I think, is that not supposed to be one of those like weird glass ceiling things that they have in restaurants?
Yes, it's a stained glass lamp. You are correct. I think that is absolutely what that is, Rob.
Yes, that's the thing I was thinking of. I was like, I know it's on a ceiling. What am I thinking of?
Yeah, I think that's right. It looks like there's some jewelry here, but it's very hard to see in this picture what exactly that is a picture of.
If you permit me to click for a moment, it is a pizza necklace.
It is a slice of pizza, isn't
I mean, it's beautiful. It's only $20. It's bejeweled pepperonis.
Well,
I mean,
is what you have. This is what you give someone special in your life. There's no doubt about it.
Right. I mean, if you've got a wife or a friend, a close friend, I think it's important that if it's a close friend, you can buy them this pizza chain, and they'll be very happy with you. You wouldn't just buy
this for somebody you just met last week. No, this is a serious relationship happening here. If you've given the pizza necklace.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I saw this article and I thought, well, this is great. I mean, we're recording today. It's
yeah, it's good. Where do you go to get these things? There's PizzaHutShop.com. And
that is correct. Yeah, and it all seems fairly reasonably priced, to be honest.
They call it the Tasteware Collection. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, see, look at this couple here at the top, though, in their tracksuits.
Yeah.
Like that could be us,
John.
That could be us.
Out in the town. We'll go out. Oh boy, look at those two. Yeah, we'll go down to the pub in our tracksuits and have a pint and maybe wear our pizza necklaces.
Oh, absolutely! Yeah, matching pizza necklaces.
Yes. I think we'd end up in the jail or something. I don't know. I don't think we would be let into a respectable establishment dressed like that.
I think
find a dive bar.
Generally, you assume the fashion police aren't real, but I think in this case they may have something to do with it.
They would come out of retirement just for us. Oh man! Well, the Hut Shop. That's very interesting. I'm gonna look at this more carefully after we're done recording, and who knows, maybe by the fall I will be lounging around my home working on a story for Mac Stories and wearing my Pizza Hut tracksuit.
Well, there you go. I think that's something to look forward to, isn't it? That's nice.
I'll take pictures. If it happens, there'll be pictures, no doubt about it. It's $100 for that tracksuit. They mean business for the tracksuit.
Yes, they do. Wow.
I don't know how much the shoes are. See, now I'm yeah, they say they're slides. The shoes are $25. That's a little more that's a little more easy to swallow.
That seems pretty reasonable.
Anyway. Well, I think we have exhausted our exhaustive list of topics. As I expected, it was a complete and total banger, as they all are, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Terminate is all about that. So I guess we'll talk in a couple of weeks.
Yes, we will
all
indeed.
Right. I'll talk to you later, Rob.